Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, we're going to talk about hip hop as a culture in 2018.
But let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic albums.
Come to Hip Hop Podcast.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week or throughout the years or whatever it may be. Please know that this podcast is available on your Apple or your Android device. If you got Apple, it's iTunes Podcast. If you got Android, it's Google Play Music. If you're the type of person where you're like, I don't have any of them, but I like to use different apps, you can use TuneIn, Podbean, Spreaker, Stitcher Radio. But please know that this is being uploaded to the hub, which is soundcloud.com/hiphopnowpodcast. I want to welcome all of you new listeners to this program. Yes, it's a hip hop program. Yes, it's frequently about news, but today is a extra show. An extra show basically is not much different from a regular news show, but instead of there being several stories, there's really only one. Typically, I do it when I have something really good to talk about. Other times I do it when there's not much to talk about as far as news goes. Not enough news stories. The podcast would be like 10 minutes as far as interesting news. Obviously, that's going to continue to happen. You got to hit the subscribe button, though. Definitely want to send a big shout out to returning listeners, those who support. But whether you're a new listener or you're a returning listener, please understand, I cannot say this any clearer. In order for this podcast to continue, I'm not asking you to go to Patreon and send me some money, though I wouldn't mind that. I'm not asking for you to hit me up on PayPal, nothing like that. All I'm asking is that you share this podcast with people you know enjoy hip-hop, because it's a very unique podcast. There's not a lot of podcasts out that do what I do. And to try to keep it as simple and short so we can get right into the business, we talk about hip-hop. Talk about hip-hop news and stories, reviews of albums and things of that nature. But the unique thing that I offer is my perspective. If you're listening for the first time, you're not a long-time listener, maybe you don't know. But I have a little bit of a resume when it comes to hip-hop. I grew up on it. I'm a fan more than anything, like anybody else. Also was an MC, rhyming from like 1994 up until recently. Still have music that I haven't put out yet. I also work in radio, and I was a radio host of a hip-hop program at two different points, from 99 to about 2002. Then I kind of went on to help produce an award-winning version of that same show. Shout out to the homie Ak and Big Scooby and Li. And also, I came back to that same program probably maybe 3 years ago, and I hosted for about 3 good years. And, you know, a lot of other stories in there. I'm not really going to gloat on myself, but please know, when I'm talking about hip-hop and I'm giving my perspective, I'm coming from a knowledge base. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't know everything. I'm not King Hip-Hop. I'm not captain of the hip-hop police. I actually despise those kind of people. I don't call myself a hip-hop historian. I do not get paid to do this. I do not teach a class on it, even though that's a thought. Somebody want to hire me, I could do that. I could do that without any textbooks. But what am I? I'm a fan, like you. So let's get right into the business now. I wanted to do this podcast because this was something that I've appeared on other people's podcasts and talked about. I've written about. Shout out to the shadowleague.com. I've mentioned right here on this podcast. And, hip hop is not as young as it used to be, like nothing is. iPhone 1 came out. It was a world changer. I had it. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was holding the future in my hands. Now we've had millions of them. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has one. Doesn't seem as special. And I feel like hip hop is at that crossroads now where it was fresh in the beginning. It was excited. Then it blew up even more. It was even more exciting. And now it's getting to the point where some fans are kind of getting bored with it. And I don't blame them in some cases. Now, in 2017, we had a lot of dope hip hop that dropped. But the problem for some is, you had to know where to look. Or if you listen to my podcast, you knew about everything. So if you're just coming on to this podcast and you're like, yo, man, I just want to know where that good stuff at. Go back and listen to my top 5 of 2017. I also have a ton of honorable mentions there. So trust me, there's enough. But 2017 was a really good year for hip hop. And there were other years that were just as good. I can't say better because it was so much that came out last year. It was just astronomical. But everybody looks at hip hop today through the lenses of urban radio and says to themselves, hip hop is really whack. Sure, I like Kendrick. Sure, I like this rap or that one. Oh, I didn't know this guy still rhymes. Why? Should old rappers hang it up? Should they let new rappers take control? Is trap rap really mumble rap? Is it really hip hop? Should it have its own category? All these different things, some of which I've covered in previous podcasts, trying to, I guess, figure it out. But then I had a revelation, right? And I noticed a trend that's been happening, and it's kind of been happening because hip hop is getting older, and these things are things like, put it this way. Let me just say this. So Yasin Bey, formerly known as Mos Def, was on tour with Talib Kweli as Black Star. If you don't know, that's kind of how they were introduced to us through Raucous Records. Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star. For the most part, High Tech did their production, right? Classic album to some, not to me, very good album, but not classic in my opinion. But nevertheless, ever since that time, people have craved to hear another album of those two together. Solo careers is cool, but they kind of wanted another Black Star album. Well, Yasin Bey, formerly known as Mos Def for some of you, announced that him and Talib Kweli are working on a Black Star album produced by Madlib. And people got hyped. And I got a little hyped, but then that made me think about another announcement of something that was long awaited and hip hop fans are thirsty for, and that's when Black Thought a couple of weeks ago announced that he would be releasing solo music produced by Ninth Wonder. Go a little bit further back, for years we craved a Tribe Called Quest album, a reunion of some sorts, something. You can't just give us the Love Below and that's it. It can't be that. Like that part in the house party where he's like, I know the party ain't over yet. And they close the door and I'm like, the party's been over. And then we got a Tribe Called Quest album. It was rumors that it was being worked on before Phife died. Phife dying kind of, I guess, pushed it forward a little bit. But we got it. And that was like close to either 16 or 19 years since the Love Below, which is insane. But we finally got it, and it was good in my opinion. And it's just getting to the point with hip hop, and me mentioning all those records that people are getting old enough where the things that they wouldn't do, they're willing to do now because they're in a different space in their life. You know, maybe they wanted something at some point. Like another one for me is, you know, and I guess this podcast can be looked at as like hip hop wishes, so to speak. But, you know, I've been wanted a Little Brother reunion mainly because I wasn't big on the listening, so I wasn't aboard then. But when I heard the Minstrel Show, man, I was all in. And right after that is when, you know, they stopped working with Ninth Wonder. And don't get me wrong, they still released some dope music around that time. But, you know, I kind of still wanted that reunion, like, you know, Fonte and rapper Big Pooh with Ninth Wonder, Little Brother, the group. And I think that's going to happen eventually also. But I think the thing that kind of soured a lot of these situations, some of it was personal, but a lot of times it has a lot to do with, you know, artists wanting to try different things. Some artists want to keep doing the same thing because it was work. It's the thing that works for them. Some want to branch out and do other things, do different types of sounds, work with different type of people, which was the case with Ninth Wonder. And the sad part is just so much potential that's lost. Now, in the case of Black Star, not so much. You know, they went on, Talib and Mos Def, now known as Yasin Bey, went on to have dope careers as solo artists. But I think there were some people who got hit to those cats as solo artists and didn't even realize that they put an album out together first as Black Star. You know what I'm saying? And to know that, you know, this is something that's going to happen in 2018 makes 2018 seem like it's going to be crazy. Like every time Jay-Z drops an album, enough time passes where people think he's never going to drop an album again. And then you get something like 444. And people are overly excited because they thought it was never going to happen again. So what I'm trying to say is hip hop has gotten to the point now where it's not only about who's new and who's hot. Now there's just different layers to hip hop. And I think it's not necessarily a young people thing because they're in their lane as far as hip hop goes. When you're young, you're trying to mess with what's new and what's hot, period. It doesn't matter what it is. You know what I'm saying? But us hip hop fans who grew up on hip hop, the new and the shiny doesn't impress us. But we're still fans. So what can we do to kind of keep that fandom? Some people just abandon it. They just, you know, say, well, whatever. That's what happened when I was a kid. Some people say, well, I'm just going to listen to all this old stuff, which is fine also. But some people still want to be excited for something they never heard before. They don't want to listen to an old album. They don't want to abandon hip hop. They just have hip hop is just too much. It's too close to the fabric of who they are, what made them as, you know, kids or adolescents growing up. And what I find a lot of times, and, you know, I include myself in this, is now it's layered. Now it's not turn on the radio and hear the latest and greatest. Now it's like, well, you're already looking through your phone on Facebook. You know, subscribe to a couple of sites like facebook.com/hip hop right now and see what's new. See what's new, but not coming from new artists. You know, maybe you loved Raucous Records and Black Star and Talib Kweli and Mos Def. Maybe you loved that whole era to death and you don't feel like you can get that. Well, something like a reunion with these two cats who can still rhyme is something you can look forward to. Even if it's the only thing you're looking forward to. It sounds sad, but for some people, that's what it is. There are people who always loved De La Soul. So to have them do a Kickstarter and drop an album, you know, was golden. And it's the same thing for, like Black Thought. Me personally, I always wanted to see what a Black Thought album without the Roots would sound like. It was a wish I've been had a long time ago, but it got to a point where I thought it would never happen. I mean, it still hasn't happened, so we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm looking forward to it. And that's what I mean. Like, I guess when it comes to myself, I'm a bad example because I'm the type of hip hop fan where I'm going to find what I want. I listen to a lot of hip hop. It's not just a part of my intro. But I listen because not only do I want to know what's new, but a lot of times, it's artists who have impressed me in the past, who've made albums or music in general that I like or love or bought and feel like, I want to hear something new. Sure, I do definitely go back to the old school stuff, but at the same time, I still kind of maintain that fresh and new. I want something shiny, even if it's coming from an older cat. I kind of want that to be there. And I think when it comes to hip hop music or the culture of the music, as fans, and I've said this in the past, as fans, we have to adjust our habits. And I'm talking to the older fans. If you turn on the radio and all you ever hear is mumble rap and you hate it and you don't care about Bodak Yellow, you don't care about any of it, Migos, none of it, it's cool. Nobody says anybody has to like anything. But honestly, you're looking in the wrong place. The internet is the new record store. I always tell the stories about how I would, and I'm not, this is not exclusive to me, but it's my podcast, so I'm telling my story. But, I always tell the story about how I would go to the record store with or without money because I just wanted to see what was new, what was coming, what I should buy the next time I have money, what I'm going to buy. Sometimes I would go in a record store and feel like, well, I only got $10, but, it was written and Reasonable Doubt are sitting on the shelf. What am I going to do? Which one am I going to get? I didn't have that problem around that time. I actually bought both. But there were plenty of times where I would go in the record store and there are classic albums that other people love that I never got an opportunity to hear, even to this day, having money for that reason. But that whole experience that a lot of kids don't have today of going into a record store and seeing a lot of promotional material, going to an album signing. Quick story, sidebar, mark the tape right there. I remember going to the record store before, one of those days I didn't have no money. I just wanted to see what was new and, what was out and what I wanted to buy. And I'm looking through the cassette case because this is back when cassettes was still heavy. So they had all the cassettes inside the case and you can look at them. And who's coming up the steps? Craig Mack. Flavor in your air. What did Craig Mack look like in person? Yeah, what he look like on TV. It's just that the splotches on his face, they look, I ain't even trying to make a joke, y'all, but they look green to me. And I was just like, man, that's even worse than what it is on TV. No, I didn't get an autograph. I just was that kind of kid. I didn't care who you were. Unless you were Michael Jackson. Let me run into Michael Jackson back then. I would be like, bruh, okay, I'm not even going to go down that road. But Michael Jackson, I was a big fan. But the point is nowadays for you older fans who are used to the record stores or like, yo, let me go get the CD. It's Tuesday. Records don't even come out on Tuesdays no more. They come out on Fridays. There's no more pulling up to a Target or pulling up to a record store, going and getting the latest whatever, cracking it open, maybe reading a line of notes, excuse me, listening to it, seeing who produced it, seeing who they shouted out, then going looking at the source maybe and seeing what they gave it. All of that is online now, all of it. And the culture of digging, the culture of buying records, you can still buy CDs, obviously, but now it's just heightened. Now it's all streaming based. Like Nipsey Hussle just dropped an album. Back in the days, I would have had to at the time I'm recording this, it's at midnight. I would have had to just be like, well, yeah, I'm in the morning, I'm gonna go, or after work, I'm gonna go by and look at it and see if I want to buy it. And you just staring at you, looking at the back, like, yo, should I buy this joint now? Now, man, you just go on Spotify or iTunes or whatever it may be, at midnight or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Preview each track if you want. If you really want, you go to one of them sites and you just download the album. But I would suggest, if you're going to go that route, download it, listen to it, see if you like it. And if you like it, especially if you really like it, go and buy it. Support the artist. But the dope part is you can do all of that from your computer, from your phone. Look, 10 years ago, downloading music on the go with your smartphone, you couldn't even do that. I remember when I first got the iPhone, and I remember they talked about it, and Steve Jobs talked about being able to do some of that. And you couldn't do it in the beginning, but I remember my brain just exploding thinking like, yo, you mean to tell me that an album can drop and I could be at my desk, I could be on my way somewhere, and I could just download it and just have the album? That's just ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And not just that, with streaming services and stuff like that, not only can you get what's new, but let's say, you just got put on to, let's say you were a fan of Mos Def as a solo artist, and you were a fan of Talib Kweli. And, now you see they performing together as Black Star. You always heard of Black Star as a group, but you never bought the album. You never heard the album because you got put on to these dudes as solo acts. Now, you hyped about them doing an album together. You really like the album. You can go and get the original, but you don't have to move anywhere. So I'm saying all of that to say this, right? When it comes to older fans of hip hop is getting older also. The world is changing. The way we consume music, how we consume it, has changed. And I think a lot of hip hop fans, older hip hop fans, keep turning on the radio, waiting to hear things they used to hear. And you're not going to get that. Now, there's going to be one or two records that kind of slip through the cracks. That's that real hip hop to you. But radio is just not the destination anymore for the type of hip hop you want to hear. The type of artist you want to hear. The type of new artists you want to discover. Radio just isn't the place. But going online, between streaming services, between social media sites, places like SoundCloud, different forums, where people know what's out. Like, put it this way, if you're a new person, you came to this podcast, maybe you didn't even know Black Star was having a reunion album or whatever coming with Madlib producing. Maybe that just blew your mind and you can't wait. Maybe you're going to go listen to something old or whatever. But that's the whole point. Podcasts like this, forums like this, websites like this that talk about hip hop, that keep you informed about dope rappers putting out dope music that, comes from all angles. Like, getting ready for this show, I'm looking on Hip Hop DX. I knew Nipsey Hussle's album's coming out, but I didn't know Audio Push was putting an album out, and they put a double album out. And I kind of like those dudes, and I like Nipsey Hussle. So for me, it's like, if I would have turned on the radio, I wouldn't have found that out. And that's what I mean. Leave the radio to the youngins. They want to know what's new and fresh and blah, blah, blah. Now, if you young and you hate mumble rap, then you that's probably why you're listening to this podcast right now. You know what I'm saying? Because you're trying to find out where you should go. But hip hop is getting older. It's not a bad thing. It's more of a maturing thing, you know, like when people say, you know, like wine, you mature like wine. Wine is, the older wine is, the better it is. Facts. And that's the same thing with hip hop. But I think we are looking in the wrong direction when we're looking to see what's still good about hip hop. And again, if 2017 was any indication of how dope hip hop is today, which it is, then the future looks bright. And hip hop was never dead. Now, real quick, I just want to say, if you're listening to this podcast, you have an opportunity to appear on this podcast in my listener profile section. What is that? Well, that's when once a month I will highlight a listener, you, on this podcast. And it's very simple, and here's the instructions. We started in January, right? So we had one for January, we had one for February. So now we're moving on to March. And we're going to do this once a month, you know, just to kind of see how it is. And it's an opportunity for us to learn about other people's likes and dislikes. But this is what you have to do, right? You have to pre-record yourself. Now, you can type this to me, but I would prefer people hear your voice. If not, you know, it's fine. You can type in and I can read it. That's cool also. But this is what we typically want. We want you to record yourself. Start by saying your name and where you're from. And all you have to do is answer 3 simple questions. Question number 1 is, what is your first experience with hip hop? Question number 2 being, what is your hip hop guilty pleasure? And question number 3, who are your top 3 hip hop MCs? Or what are your top 3 hip hop albums of all time and why? And what you would do is you would record yourself, whether it's, I mean, you don't have to go hop in the studio and pay studio time. If you have a smartphone, there's a voice recorder already on your phone, especially if it's an iPhone. There's a voice recorder already on there. If it's an Android and your phone doesn't come with a voice recorder, you can download anyone for free on Android, and you can record yourself and you can email it. And the email address is vegasworld5@gmail.com. That's vegasworld5@gmail.com. Be the next listener profile on Hip Hop Now podcast. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at vegasworldinc. If Facebook is what you do, facebook.com/hiphop right now is the destination. Hit that like button. Get a lot of content going on there. And also, if you're like, damn, Vegas, you're not going to review this album? I do review albums. I do it on my YouTube channel. It's called the B-Roll Network. B-R-O-L-E Network. I do it on a series called The Rap Game, where I play a video game, or at least I try to, and talk about hip hop. And typically that's where I do my reviews of albums, like the Black Panther soundtrack. So go to YouTube, B-Roll Network, and subscribe to that channel today. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace. Drop it on the random.